Good afternoon and welcome to the daily video check-in for today, Thursday, July 16th. A quick plug that this evening is the Temple Israel. It's called the Virtual Gala. I'm not sure why it's virtual because, yes, it's online, but it's a real gala. It's a real celebration of our community. It's a real way for us to show support for our community, so I hope you all join. I'd also like to talk and connect in a way about a prayer that actually Rabbi Hirsch spoke about in her check-in yesterday, and that is Le'ha Dodi. She spoke about Le'ha Dodi, and she actually mentioned how it comes from the Kabbalists who would go and welcome Shabbat, literally joining God and the Jewish community, the bride and the groom. And so we welcome that Shabbat bride with Le'ha Dodi. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Le'ha Dodi because, well, it's one of my favorite prayers too, and I wanted to add a little bit to what she had to say. So, Le'ha Dodi, unlike much of our liturgy, is not only newer. It's not thousands of years old. It's so maybe 500 years old, but it also is a different form. It's actually a piyut, a poem, a liturgical poem, and so it has a rhyme scheme. And as much as we might musically like to set songs that feel like they have the kind of typical chorus and verse structure, most of our liturgy doesn't have that chorus and verse structure. It's just set as a kind of a full blessing that goes from point A to point B, period. And so we often have to musically, especially in the Reform world, kind of create a little bit different musical setting that the text itself might not ordinarily lend itself to. Le'ha Dodi, on the other hand, is actually written as a song, as a poem that is ripe for that kind of setting. It has that refrain, Le'ha Dodi likrat kala panei Shabbat nekabela, which happens to be 7 words. It's kind of a Kabbalistic thing there. If we're talking about the 7th day and welcoming the Shabbat bride, it's interesting that Le'ha Dodi likrat kala panei Shabbat nekabela is 7 words. That refrain itself is 7. So it's this beautiful song. It's got this refrain, and it's also one of 2 different kinds of musical settings that we have in our prayers. Those 2 different settings is we tend to have some prayers that we sing the same way all the time. Shema, we have a couple different tunes, but we often hear Shema Yisrael, right? Aleinu, we sing Aleinu L'Shabbat. That is just the tune for Aleinu. There are some other settings, but that's pretty much what we do. Le'ha Dodi, on the other hand, is one of those musical moments, one of those songs, kind of like Micha Mocha, where we have these multiple settings, and it is so musical just in its poetry and in its nature that it's ripe for creating creative and beautiful and meaningful musical settings that really vary in style. So, a quick tour of our Le'ha Dodi moments that help bring God and the community together for Shabbat. We know we have the one that's probably most common in our community, Le'ha Dodi likrat kala. Number 1. We also have Le'ha Dodi likrat kala panei Shabbat. Number 2. We also have La da 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 Le'ha Dodi La da 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 likrat kala. Those are 3 that we sometimes do with our community. There are many others, but as a composer, I've also been particularly inspired by those words. So I've actually written 3 Le'ha Dodi settings. So the one that's probably most well known to all of you, and it's got a little bit of that 7 thing in it too. Some of the meter is actually in 7, going along with the 7-word refrain and this blessing for welcoming Shabbat, the 7th day. It goes Le'ha Dodi likrat kala panei Shabbat nekabela. Le'ha Dodi likrat kala panei Shabbat nekabela. That's number 1. Number 2. Le'ha Dodi likrat kala bene Shabbat nekabela. And number 3. Le'ha Dodi likrat kala bene Shabbat nekabela. Le'ha Dodi likrat kala bene Shabbat nekabela. So there's 3 of our traditional Le'ha Dodi settings, 3 of my original composition Le'ha Dodi settings, and I want to leave you with the final word about what all of that does. Le'ha Dodi is this beautiful spiritual joining of community in God, the community of Israel and Shabbat, but it's got so much personal connection as well. Le'ha Dodi itself actually is an acrostic of the composer, or the poet, I should say, Shlomo HaLevi. So each line, each verse of the 9 lines begins with one word of his name. So we have this unique personal imprint from him, as well as this wonderful community vision of bringing us together as a community and for Shabbat. So with that in mind, I hope you join us for community as we come together on Thursday, not on Shabbat, on Thursday night, and then of course tomorrow night, Friday night for Shabbat, and you'll have to wait and see what Le'ha Dodi we sing then. Good to see you all.